Hi everyone, welcome to a Centrist View, and welcome back to the continuation of my analysis of Project 2025. Before I get started, I just want to put in a little caveat. During this video, it's more than likely you will hear the sound in the background that sounds like a dog being severely abused, and I just want to show you that this is the culprit in question. His name is Ragnar. He's a 100-pound Great Pyrenees and German Shepherd mix, and he is rarely in that kennel. But right now, I have a 10-pound Chihuahua that is in heat, so I have to keep them separate. And he is not very happy about it. So if you hear this horrendous shrieking in the background, that's what's going on. Please do not think any animals or anyone, people or anything else are being abused at my home, because that is just something that would never happen. Anyway, now to get back to the business at hand. I left off yesterday. I had completed promise number 1, which was, restore the family as the centerpiece of American life and protect our children. So moving on to their total of 4 promises. So promise number 2 is dismantle the administrative state and return self-governance to the American people. Okay, we'll get started. Conservatives desire a smaller government for the sake of human flourishing. In the case of making federal government small, the simple answer is in the Constitution itself. The surest proof of this is how strenuously and creatively generations of progressives and many Republican insiders have worked to cut themselves free from the strictures of the 1789 Constitution and subsequent amendments. Well, some people are of the opinion we're seeing that in action right now with some of the actions the current administration has taken. But, again, I guess that's for constitutional scholars, attorneys and judges to figure out. So they use an example of what they're talking about, and the example they use is the federal budget. It says Congress is required to pass a budget and 12 issue-specific spending bills comporting with it every single year. The last time Congress did so was 1996 during the Bill Clinton administration. Congress no longer meaningfully budgets, authorizes, or categorizes spending. Excuse me, my dogs are not exactly the most well-behaved. Instead, party leaders negotiate multi-million-dollar spending bills, several thousand pages long, then vote on it before anyone has a chance to read it. Debate time is restricted, amendments are prohibited, all backed up against a midnight deadline when the previous omnibus spending bill will run out and the federal government shuts down. This process is not designated to empower 330 million American citizens and their elected representatives, but rather to empower the party elite secretly negotiating without any public scrutiny or oversight. Well, as I've mentioned before, this was written in, it says that it was launched in 2022. So, it was before the current administration, but I have to say that there's a whole lot of hypocrisy here, because the big beautiful bill, as it's being called, is well over 1,000 pages long, and I can't remember which representative it was, one of the women, who said that no, she didn't read it before voting for it. And that's exactly what they're talking about. But yet here, this is a conservative platform, as it stated earlier, a few pages earlier, that this is written for conservatives by conservatives. This is telling them what should not be done, but yet it's being done and being supported. In fact, some of the authors of this are also authors in the big beautiful bill. So, of this leadership for mandate known as Project 2025. They, several of the people who helped to write this are currently in the administration and helped to write the big, beautiful bill. So I'd say there's a bit of hypocrisy right there. In fact, there's a lot, but moving on. Public scrutiny and democratic accountability make life harder for policymakers, so they skirt it. It's not dysfunction, it's corruption. There it is in their own words. It's corruption, but yet it's happening, and the conservatives are supporting it. So, how does it say? I got questions. Okay. The worst examples of this corruption is the administrative state. Dismantling it must be a top priority. So, the administrative state includes all the agencies and such, and this is the premise behind the administration shuttering all the different agencies and cutting jobs and things like that. The term administrative state refers to the policy-making work done by the bureaucracies of all the federal government's departments, agencies, and millions of employees. Article 1 of the Constitution. All legislative powers herein granted shall be vested in a Congress of the United States, which shall consist of a Senate and a House of Representatives. I could get into the whole legislating through executive order thing too, but I'll refrain for the moment in case it comes up later. This executive authority was part of the framers' doctrine of separated powers. The legislative, executive, and judicial powers are separated into different branches. Each has its own powers. Each branch checks over the other. Currently, the president is saying that essentially that there is no checks and balances, which is what this is. When each branch can check over each other, it balances the power. And that's right now being disputed by the leader of the executive branch. Congress has passed those powers to agencies, etc., which gives them deniability. Congress passes intentionally vague laws that delegate decision-making over a given issue to a federal agency. An example is the EPA, which strangles domestic energy production through difficult-to-understand rulemaking process. The DHS, which helps migrants criminally enter our country. The DOJ, which forces school districts to undermine girls' sports and parents' rights to satisfy transgender extremists. The Pentagon, which forces troops to attend training seminars about white privilege. And the state, which infuses U.S. foreign aid programs with woke extremism about intersectionality and there's a word that I'm not supposed to say on YouTube, but it has to do with whether or not a woman has a choice over what to do about issues concerning her own body. Let's put it that way. I think that explains it. The administrative state holds 100% of its power at the sufferance of Congress, and its insulation from presidential discipline is an unconstitutional fairy tale spun by the Washington establishment to protect its turf. Cultural institutions are only as independent from public accountability as elected officials and voters permit. The most egregious regulations promulgated by the current administration, as a reminder, President Biden was in office when this was written. The Oval Office, the many executive orders make clear he is responsible for the regulations or deregulations, policies, etc. A conservative president must move swiftly to do away with these vast abuses of presidential power and remove the career and political bureaucrats who fuel it. He must restore fiscal limits and constitutional accountability. A conservative president must look to the legislative branch for decisive action. There are many tools a courageous conservative president can use to handcuff the bureaucracy, push Congress to return to its constitutional responsibility, restore power over Washington, D.C. to the American people, bring the administrative state to heel, and in the process, defang and defund. Excuse me. Guys, come on, back off, please. You're not making this easy. Sorry. Defang and defund the woke culture warriors who have infiltrated every last institution in America. The conservative lays out how to use many of these tools, including how to fire the supposedly unfireable federal bureaucrats. We're seeing that in action right now. How to shutter wasteful and corrupt bureaus and offices. We're seeing that happen right now. Now, whether they are wasteful and corrupt, again, is subject to interpretation and opinion, but they're perceived as being wasteful and corrupt from the conservative viewpoint. How to muzzle woke propaganda at every level of government. So I call that censorship, but how to restore the American people's constitutional authority over the administrative state. How to save untold taxpayer dollars in the process. Yeah, we saw how that happens. We cut all the programs for people in need and cut the taxes of the people who have the most. Okay, most important government functional, national defense. Now, the conservative viewpoint is that the most important governmental function is national defense. I, however, would argue, because the Constitution says common defense and general welfare, not one above the other. It doesn't say and or. It doesn't say common defense, then general welfare. It says both, and both should be given equal weight. And general welfare is generally defined as food, shelter, healthcare, education, basic things like that. So, moving on. The next conservative president must end the leftist social experimentation with the military, restore war fighting as its sole mission, and set defecting the threat of the Chinese Communist Party as its highest priority. So, that's what they think about that. Promise number 3. Defend our nation's sovereignty, borders, and bounty against global threats. In Washington, D.C. and other centers of the leftist power, like the media and the academy, the statement of basic civics is branded hate speech. Well, I think that's a little strong. I wouldn't say that they agree, but I wouldn't call it hate speech either. Progressive elites speak in lofty terms of openness, progress, expertise, cooperation, and globalization. America's corporate and political elites do not believe in the ideals to which our nation is dedicated: self-governance, the rule of law, and ordered liberty. Progressive pundits and policymakers enthusiastically support supra-international organizations like the United Nations and European Union, which are run and staffed almost entirely by people who share their values and are mostly insulated from the influence of national elections. Well, I'm going to stop there for a second. So, in a previous section, I talked about how they want to stop one of the pillars is to staff the offices and such with conservatives. So why is it wrong for them to do it, for the other side to do it, but not for them? Again, hypocrisy. Lots and lots of hypocrisy. As far as the influence of national elections, I'm not quite exactly sure what they mean by that, but that's why they're eager for America to sign international treaties, everything from pharmaceutical patents to climate change to the rights of the child. The left supports open borders despite the lawless humanitarian crisis their policy created along America's southern border. Well, I'm sitting about 30 miles from America's southern border right now. It's due south, that direction. And as the crow flies, it's 32 miles. So I'm going to tell you that I moved out here in 2014, and there was a lot of traffic. By 2016, it was almost nothing. Around 2018, it started to pick up again. By 2020, it was really bad. By 2022, it was crazy. And now it is slowing back down again. But those years covered several different administrations, both left and right. So you can't blame it on just one or the other. Both administrations allowed it to get to the point that it got to. And I need to make that point because I live it. I couldn't tell you how many human beings who have been out here in the desert for days lost, who've wandered up on my property and asked for water. Yes, I give water to human beings. I don't care if you don't like it. And no, it's not illegal. It's called humanitarian aid. And it's perfectly legal to give water to a human being. So, in that now. Anyway, so, again, this is some of that propaganda talk because it's just not entirely true. It's not entirely untrue, but it's definitely truth that's been altered. Okay. The left are environmental extremists. Environmental isn't a political cause, but a pseudo-religion meant to baptize liberals' ruthless pursuit of absolute power in the White House. Okay, now I'm going to disagree with that too, because, well, I'm not a liberal, but as you can see by my surroundings, I absolutely love this environment. I love nature. I love the earth, and I do think that some people can go just a little bit too far with it, but I really just don't see anything wrong with not developing and digging up every square inch of it. There's absolutely nothing wrong with protecting this beauty. So, a little bit please, come on, stop. Environmental extremism is decidedly anti-human. Okay, I'm not even going to try to figure out what that means because it's pretty clear that humans need clean water to drink and clean air to breathe. So any extremism is bad, but environmentalism, without going to the extremes, is definitely not anti-human. Environmental ideologues would ban the fuel that runs almost all of the world's cars, planes, factories, farms, and electricity grids. Yeah, the ideologues would, but the majority know that we're never going to have a petroleum-free world. But cutting down on it is, to the most degree possible, reducing emissions and stuff to the most degree possible is the goal, as I understand the argument. Okay? So, abandoning confidence in human resilience and creativity in responding to the challenges of the future would raise impediments to the most meaningful human activity itself as fundamentally a threat to be sacrificed to the God of nature. Wow. Okay. You know what? I'm not even going to try to decipher what that's supposed to mean. Because, nope, not gonna. Just gonna go. Unfettered trade with China has been a catastrophe. It has made a handful of American corporations enormously profitable while twisting their business incentives away from the American people's needs. I guess I can't probably disagree with that entirely. For a generation, politicians of both parties promised that engagement with Beijing would grow our economy while injecting American values into China. The opposite has happened. American factories have closed, jobs have been outsourced, our manufacturing economy has been financialized. Yeah, that absolutely is true. As I remember it, there was like this outsourcing craze during the 2000s, and that's when a lot of the companies did go overseas. 2000s would have been George W. Bush. The Chinese Communist Party dictated terms only to break them whenever it suited them. They stole our technology, spied on our people, and threatened our allies with trillions of dollars of wealth and military power financed by their access to our market. Then came the rise of big tech, a tool of China's government, in exchange for cheap labor and regulatory special treatment from Beijing. America's largest tech firms funneled data about Americans to the CCP. That's the Chinese Communist Party. They handed over sensitive intellectual property with military and intelligence applications to keep the money rolling in. Honestly, I don't know if that is... I'm not well versed on China and in the issues with China, trade issues and such. I'm just not. So I'm going to have to just pass by that. Hey, if anybody who happens to be watching knows something about it, I would love if you would educate me in the comments. Thanks. The same can be observed in many U.S. colleges and universities. Through the CP's Confucius Institutes, Beijing has been just as successful at compromising and co-opting corporate America. A casual reader might take the last few pages as surveying a broad array of challenges facing the American people and the next conservative president. Supranational policy making, border security, globalization, engagement with China, manufacturing, big tech in Beijing compromised colleges. But these really are not many issues, but two. One, that China is a totalitarian enemy of the U.S., not a strategic partner or fair competitor. Two, that America's elites have betrayed the American people. The solution to all of the above problems is not to tinker with this or that government program to replace this or that bureaucrat. These are problems not of technocratic efficiency, but of national sovereignty and constitutional governance. We solve them not by trimming and reshaping the leaves, but by ripping out the tree's root and branch. It's pretty strong language. Throughout this, there's a lot of strong language about China, and it all may or may not be true. But China has over 1 billion people, and numbers alone, I'd be leery about picking a fight with them, that's for sure. And they have a whole different idea about national loyalty than we do. Theirs is very strong. So, I don't know. I'm not going to be an alarmist. I just become a little leery about talk like that, that's all. Excuse me. International organizations and agreements that erode our Constitution, rule of law, or popular sovereignty should not be reformed. They should be abandoned. Illegal immigration should be ended, not mitigated. The border sealed, not reprioritized. Economic engagement with China should be ended, not rethought. Our manufacturing and industrial base should be restored, not allowed to deteriorate further. Confucius Institutes, TikTok, and any other arm of Chinese propaganda and espionage should be outlawed, not merely monitored. Universities taking money from the CCP should lose their accreditations, charters, and eligibility for federal funds. We're seeing some of that happen. I don't know if it's specifically... I don't know exactly if they're targeting students from specific countries or exactly how that's working, but yes, we are seeing some of that. The next conservative president should assert America's energy interests around the world. America's vast reserves of oil and natural gas are not an environmental problem. They are the lifeblood of economic growth. American dominance of the global energy market would be a good thing for the world, and more importantly, for we the people. What is their obsession with dominance? I don't know. That bothers me. I don't necessarily think that relying only on oil. I think we need a mixture of the natural resources, you know, the oil, the gas. And, I mean, I run on solar, completely solar. I'm off-grid out here. There's, I think it's 4 miles that direction and about 4.5 miles that direction to any municipal utilities. That includes water. I haul my water. So I can understand that for large cities, solar alone may not be enough, and because on cloudy days, yeah, I do have to be careful what I run. I have a relatively small system. I don't need a big system, but I don't see why it has to be either or. And it seems that with the right or the left, it's either or. The left seems to want to do away completely with fossil fuels. The right seems to want to do away completely with green energy. And I don't understand that. I mean, why would why would you only use some of the tools in your toolbox when you can use all of them and do the job more efficiently? So that's my opinion on that. Sorry, I talked too long. And all right, full spectrum strategic energy dominance would facilitate the reinvigoration of America's entire industrial and manufacturing sector as we disentangle our economy from China. Globally, it would rebalance power away from dangerous regimes in Russia and the Middle East. It would build powerful alliances with fast-growing nations in Africa and provide us the leverage to counter Chinese ambitions in South America and the Pacific. Locally, it would drive billions of dollars of private investment into the communities that have been hammered by globalization since the 1990s. And it would clarify our intentions to Beijing that the next president can ensure that a large part of America's reindustrialization is in the production of the equipment we will need to dissuade future foreign meddling with U.S. vital interests. I'm sure that's true to a point, but again, I don't understand why. I mean, fossil fuels, yeah, we may have a lot of it, but the fact is they're non-renewable. They are a finite resource. Eventually they will run out. So why not mix in some other things to take the burden off of that? I do know I had quite a few friends that were working in Dakota during the oil boom up there, and they made fantastic money. So yes, the economic thing I absolutely cannot argue with. It is a big boost. And I'm not sure it would pay as well, but green energy has its own, its own industry. It would create quite a few jobs as well. And you have to really know what you're doing to do these systems. So it does take an amount of, specialty, and that would make a better paying job than, say, a minimum wage job for unskilled labor. Anyway, that's all I've got to say about that part. I'm going to end this video now. I believe it's getting pretty long, but it's so bright out here I really can't see the timer. So I will continue with promise number 4 in the next video. And if you're still awake out there, thanks for listening. See you next time.